First, I want to just kind of start off, obviously long 3 days for us, and really appreciate the scouting staff, personnel staff, all the support staff, the medical team, our football technology, all the coaches. Just obviously a lot of work goes into this, extremely important for our organization. Excited about the guys we got, but it's been a long weekend, but we felt we did some good and helped our football team. And with that, I'll take some questions.
So Matt wasn't kidding when he told us in Palm Beach that you guys wanted more speed for your weapons room. How do you feel about just where that room is after the 3 guys you took?
I think we've certainly added some competition. I think that was really important. I think not the only position we had a lot of competition, but I think certainly we're very much a belief that competition is going to bring out the best, and the cream's going to rise, and that's something we needed to do, and I think we accomplished that.
Still a possibility you could add a veteran to that mix, or are you kind of set with what you have at receiver?
Yeah, I think I've spoken on it before. We'll kind of obviously regroup, after tonight and tomorrow, and kind of see where we sit as a team and a roster, and then go forward and see what we need. It's roster building is 365. I say it all the time. I'm sure you guys get sick of it, but it really is. So we'll kind of see what opportunities are out there as we move forward.
Why was offensive line as important? You took 3 offensive linemen. Why was that important for you to add competition there specifically?
Yeah, Brian, I think it's always important to us, right? I think we've kind of committed to that as we've gone along. So we got some guys coming off injury. Our numbers were a little lower than they have been in the past coming into the draft. I'd like to be in 11 or 12. I think we were at 9. So we knew that we wanted to add to that room to create some competition and get the best out of it. And after we took the first 2 guys, we didn't really see Rashid falling kind of where he did, and at some point we just kind of thought it was worth it. So
why did he fall?
not really sure. I know he's this spring he wasn't able to do some things because he was dealing with an injury and stuff. That may be part of it, but you're not really sure. But like I said, after a while, we just thought it was too good to pass up.
Jody, did you change anything philosophically when it comes to drafting linemen? Your first 2 drafts, I think you took Cole Madison and Elton, and those were the only 2. And then obviously it's been like offensive linemen lose that ever since. Did you change? Is it just how it worked out, like Ted used to say, or did you change a little bit in your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously, I think from the 20-some years that I've been with this organization, we've had 2 quarterbacks that we know we have to protect. And that's kind of a high priority. So I don't think it's really changed. But I think, certainly over the last 4 or 5 years, I think just when you're sitting in that chair, you just realize how important that is. And it's just very, very hard to find those guys. There's just not many of them around. So if you have an opportunity to take a guy you think can play, I think you have to consider it.
Hey Brian, last year you guys were pretty confident, or sounded pretty confident about Bakhtiari's comeback, and that ended up being really rough. How confident can you be about how he's going to be going forward?
I have a lot of faith in David and him getting back to where he needs to be. I know he's working his tail off and feel good about it. At the same time, I think it's the National Football League, and injuries are tough. And I think we have to be prepared either way. But I'm pretty confident that Dave's going to get back to the level that he was at prior to the injury.
Brian, after going through the main part of free agency and this, is there anything you look at your roster and say, boy, we're still short or deficient in any area?
I don't know if I'd use the word deficient or short, but I think you're always kind of looking to improve. And it's like anything. This wave through the draft, 32 teams picked a bunch of players. So from here on out, there's going to be guys now that might be available that weren't available before, and if they can help our football team, we're certainly going to look at that. That's kind of part of the process. So again, all these guys we took today we're really excited about. None of them have played a snap of NFL football, and until we get them here and get them with our team and see what we really have, I think you're always kind of unsure. But I do feel really good about our numbers, our roster, and just some of maybe the spots we were able to shore up a little bit through this draft process.
How much did Watson and Dobbs' potential special teams return ability sort of factor into their grade?
Yeah, I think that was certainly a factor, and not only the return stuff, but just as cover guys. They're both big guys that can run, they can get down the field and make some plays. So I think one of the things over the past few years that we've kind of gotten hampered by was just having some guys specifically on the offensive side of the ball that really couldn't do much for us on teams, and hopefully these guys can help there.
I'll ask you about one of those positions specifically. How do you feel about tight end? Obviously, you didn't take any Robert coming out the ACL.
Right.
How do you feel that position shapes up right now after the draft?
I'm pretty excited about it. Obviously, Josiah kind of was coming off an injury, and really towards the end of the season kind of came on, and we're excited about where he's headed. TD, Tyler Davis, we picked up early in the year, and as his opportunities grew, not only in the games but in practice, I think we might have something there. So I'm excited about that to add to the big dog. And then whenever Bobby's ready, we kind of know what we have there. So I like the group, but and we wouldn't have not addressed it if it came to us in the draft, but it just didn't fall that way.
You had 4 7th-round picks, which seems like a lot. When you got to that position of the draft, how much were you targeting guys that you think specifically can come in and help special teams?
We were looking at that a bunch, and certainly guys like Carpenter and stuff were that factored in. At the same time, we wanted to kind of stay true to our board. We try to do that in the 7th round because you can make some mistakes there and just try to take the best player available. Sometimes you can get caught up looking at depth charts and saying what great a chance does this guy have to make the team and things like that. And I think you can make a lot of mistakes that way instead of just taking who you think the best player is, because you really don't know once you kind of get to camp with injuries and things how that's going to shake out. So I think you got to be careful of counting numbers and thinking that one player may have a better chance to make the team than the other just because of the numbers you have, because that can change so quickly.
What did you like about Kingsley, and why only the one edge rusher? Is that just the way the board worked for you?
I think so. It's the way the board worked. Obviously, we have some guys coming back that we have a lot of faith in, but Kingsley, I think he goes by JJ. He's got great length, good hands, good power in his hands. He had some pretty good pass rush production over the last couple of years, and certainly the size and length I think is what drew us to him.
On 2 of the guys you took today, do you think Zach Tom can play anywhere on the line? And with Carpenter, how do you see him, where is he situated best based on his size?
Yeah, I think so. I'll start with Tom. And that's what drew us to me. Obviously, he's not the biggest guy that we would take, but his ability to play almost all 5 spots from center to left and right tackle and both guard spots was something that really intrigued us. He's an exceptionally smart kid and has the ability to handle that not only physically but mentally, which is a tough challenge. But so we'll kind of get him up here and see where he fits best. But we were really excited to take him. He just fits that versatility that we like so much. And then with Carpenter, he's a little bit of a tweener because he's got the size of a linebacker, but he plays safety and he has that kind of speed. So I think he's really, really physical. So I think we'll kind of figure out exactly how he fits, whether he goes to the safety room or the linebacker room at different times and what packages he plays in on defense, and certainly on special teams. That was one of the big reasons we took him.
Did you field any trade calls for Jordan Love, and is that something that you were willing to do?
Yeah, I wouldn't talk about, those if I did, but I think I've spoken on that. I think we're pretty excited to have, Jordan here for his 3rd year and kind of see where he develops and stuff like that. We always listen to anybody that wants to call in any player, we're excited to kind of see where he goes.
Brian, did you guys have your eye on Toure at all while he was at Montana, or was it just the year at Nebraska?
Yeah, no, our scouts do a good job. Obviously, we track these guys, through and when they transfer. So many of these guys, especially from the one kind of the lower levels, got caught in that COVID year where they couldn't play or didn't play much, and then some of them transferred to try to get opportunities and things like that, and then Samari fell into that kind of category. So certainly, when you look back at his last year, it had a huge year. 1,300 some yards, 10 touchdowns. Transferred to Nebraska, put up really good numbers in 1 year there. So we kind of knew about him all the way through.
Brian, a lot of these guys were in for visits. I mean, how handful of them that you picked came in for those 30 visits? How strongly did that convince you to hope they were on the board and grab one of them?
Yeah, I think it's helpful from a comfort level. I think we've tracked that before, and we're not typically a team that just drafts from the guys we bring in on the 30 visits. But this year, there was a number of them that we did. So certainly from my end, we do it for a number of different reasons when we bring guys in. It could be medical, it could be getting comfortable with the person, it could be learning, it could be all kinds of different things. But once you do that, you kind of you make up your mind, yay or nay, and you do feel more comfortable with that player because you got to spend more time with them. So that can happen, and that's a good thing.
Will any of the linemen that you picked get an initial look at right tackle with that job, at least semi-open?
Yeah, we're going to put the best 5 out there, but I think our guys do a great job of cross-training these guys. But I would certainly think that certainly with all 3 of them, they'd probably get a look at right tackle at some point.
You didn't draft a slot receiver. Is that Jair's position right now going forward without
You're talking about nickel corner? You said slot receiver. You're talking about nickel corner?
Excuse me, yeah. long weekend.
Yeah, we'll see kind of how that plays out. We brought in Keyshawn Nixon as well, who's played that a bunch. And so we'll kind of, I think the luxury we have is we got a bunch of guys that can play inside and out. Ja coming back from the injury, he's so valuable because he can move him anywhere. I imagine that Joe, and that's really a question for Joe, I mean, it's probably going to be game to game depending on what is best for us, because he can shadow, he can play on the outside, knock guys down, he can move inside, he can kind of do it all. So I imagine that might be a little bit game by game, but that's probably something we'll get to once we get down to the season.
Ryan, in the past week, we heard Jason Vrabel say, I worked with Sammy Watkins in Buffalo. We heard Devondre Campbell say, I talked to Matt LaFleur every day in Atlanta. Today I just heard Jonathan Ford say, I went to middle school with TJ Sladen and I was getting texted by Jonathan Gardner. So is this coincidence? I know you've got a coaching staff that comes from all corners of the league the last 2 or 3 years. But is this an emphasis that, while you play close to your vest, you like those connections?
That's an interesting question. I think it's more coincidence than anything else, but I would be willing to bet if you kind of, any team's draft or, I think you'd see a lot of that. It's a smaller pond than you think, and these coaches move around so much that that there's more of those connections than you would think. It's certainly helpful when there's relationships there that might give you some insight into the player and the person that you're bringing in. It's just kind of part of the puzzle, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's a bigger piece than a lot of other things.
Ryan, what do you think you got there though in Ford? A big guy that can say somewhere in that 338 range.
Yeah, huge man that can clog up a lot of space. I think he's, obviously a one technique more than anything else, but he's tough to move off the spot. I think his best football is ahead of him. So we're excited. I mean, to find a guy who's played as much as he has, and a guy obviously the size is something we were looking for.
Hey, Ryan, it's been since 2010, really, since you've had a dominant defense, and you've invested a lot of capital into that defense. What's your expectation for where they're going to be this year?
Yeah, I would say the expectation level for our whole football team, but specifically our defense, is very high. I thought they played really well last year. They ended on a very high note, playing at a very high level. And we got some guys coming back that'll be here in their second year that I think will be important. And I like the way that group is growing together. Again, it's a new season, and they got to put in the work and the time and the chemistry and all the things that go with that. But I think the expectation level for that group is going to be high.
Goody, we talked a lot about versatility on your offensive line. One of the other things, though, is you guys always seem to take college left tackles, and I understand that that's usually your best lineman in college. But where did that start? Did that start with 10? I mean, I don't remember that being a thing with Ron, and why is that kind of a tenet of your draft?
Yeah, I think it's not something we've talked about a ton. Not that we haven't, but I know, I guess, from maybe the first time I know we talked a lot about it with Ted when we were on there, but it wasn't like we specifically, hey, we want to take left tackles. I think we wanted to take a certain kind of athlete that usually do play left tackle, and I think those guys usually have the kind of versatility we're looking for. But we certainly have had a lot of success there. There's no doubt about it.
I don't know if this feels this way for you, but it feels like it wasn't that long ago that it was your first draft and you were talking about your beer fridge. Has it gone by quickly? You've had some challenges. You've dealt with it with GM, obviously. And in what ways do you think you're a lot better than that first time around?
I mean, with experience, I think you become. I'd like to think I've become calmer in a lot of the situations that we have. But yeah, I mean, I think this is my 24th draft overall, and I think certainly it's the part of the job that I love the most. I think this part of the team building phase is something that I grew up in, and it's such a big part of what we do. And like right now, our scouts are doing the UDFA process, and there's part of me that still wishes I was in that spot, next to Russ and Elliott and those guys when we were trying to sign all these guys, right? Like those guys are kind of doing most of that now. So I do like this part of it, but yeah, I think with anything, the more kind of scar tissue you have as you go through, just makes you feel more confident, more experienced in what we're doing. You realize that you're not going to get them all right. That never happens, and as long as you kind of like keep the focus on doing what's right for the Green Bay Packers, then I think you can go home and sleep good at night.
Since you were able to add 2 more receivers today, do you want to still look and see if there's a veteran out there to add, or are you in wait-and-see mode with looking at that?
Yeah, again, I kind of touched on it earlier. I think we'll kind of regroup here, after the draft this week and with rookie minicamp coming up, and we'll see what's out there. Like you guys know, every year when you draft players at certain positions, specifically high, other players on other teams may become available, right? So we'll see what's out there, and if we can help our team, it wouldn't prevent us. Just what we did in the draft wouldn't prevent us from trying to help our team at wide receiver or anywhere else.
When you go into a draft, do you have usually a vision or two of what you're seeing as far as particular players or positions? And then if you do, how often does it actually turn out that way?
Rarely, if you're really focusing on like one or two guys. I mean, I think in the history that I've been here in Green Bay, we've been picking so far back, it's really hard to kind of narrow that down in the first round or even the second. I think you do have a feeling sometimes where you might have guys valued higher than maybe the rest of the league, and that you have a pretty good sense they may be there. And then it's kind of deciding whether you want to just go ahead and take them or see if you can get them later. There's just some of those things. But for me, it's always about kind of trying to understand the board's strengths and weaknesses, kind of where the clusters are. And, if there are, you'd love to go into every draft not feeling like you had to accomplish something at a position, but if you do, trying to make sure you can get there to accomplish that. And but it doesn't always happen that way either. Sometimes runs happen at different times, and you can't.
Like in this one, were you thinking pretty good chance with all these picks, you'll come out of it with as many offensive linemen as you did?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of picks. We had 11 picks, and we had a couple of trades that moved around a little bit. I don't think I went into it thinking I was going to have 3 offensive linemen or 3 wide receivers. I think it's just as we got later in the day, today, it was okay. You're looking at all the different options, and I think we just kind of tried to stay as much as we could to what was the best player available.
How much input did you get from Rich when it came to maybe some guys who you think for special teams?
Yeah, I think a bunch. I mean, obviously through the whole offseason, not just for the draft, but I mean, you look at, we brought in a kicker and a punter, and certainly even Keyshawn Nixon came from the Raiders and stuff like that. So he's been really invaluable as far as kind of like, what we've been able to do, and we'll continue to be.
I guess I meant specifically today with, having those 4 7th-round picks and maybe thinking about some special teams guys.
Yeah, like Carpenter was one, and there's a couple other guys, JJ, was certainly a guy that was on his list, and Dobbs as well. So, yeah, it's like I said, I think we got to change that. We got to get better there. So I think we're kind of open to a lot of different things maybe than we would have done in the past.
What specifically to Joe?
Sorry.
Do you think when you step back, or maybe you can step back right now, do you think it's been worth it to not chase, the one offensive guy we might have been able to get by using the draft picks to move up? Would that have improved you any more than what you did here, where you used all your draft picks? I mean, is there a guy who could have changed your offense?
Are you talking about at the top of the draft? You're talking about?
Yeah,
Okay,
if
gotcha.
you were really gone after somebody.
Yeah, I think again, I think we looked at some of those options, and ultimately we decided to stay where we were and do what we did. But yeah, there's some good players in this draft. I don't know if they would have changed our offense. You know what I mean? I think it certainly would have helped. But the guys we took, I think I imagine you're kind of trying to refer to the receiver position more than anything else. And for me, what I think we were able to add in the draft, for the 3 guys we drafted, I think they can help us. Again, we got to get them here, and they got to get on the field, and we'll see what they can do with what Matt and those guys want them to do. But I think they can help us. So, but yeah, there's some good players in this draft, and that's one of the hardest parts about the draft is, especially early on, is watching these guys that you spent so much time studying and kind of realizing how good that they are, and watching them go and not be able to get them. I mean, that's tough.
You've mentioned Carpenter with special teams a couple times. What specifically did you like from what you saw of him in Georgia Tech tape on special teams?
Physical, explosive, fast. His size. Again, he's just he's able to do so many things, and I think the physical toughness part of it too was something that drew us to him.
You mentioned the other day that Aaron was up here last week. He said the other night that he was going to come for the mini camp and then maybe some days in May. I understand it's voluntary.
Yeah.
But you did draft 3 wide receivers, and you added Sammy, who hasn't worked here before.
Yeah.
Are you guys in your relationship at a point where you can say, hey, it would be really great if you could maybe do a little more in the off-season program than you were planning on since we have so many
Yeah,
receivers?
we weren't expecting him last week and he came, so that was good, right? So, but no, I think, yeah, I mean, we can kind of talk about anything, but I think we have a lot of faith and trust in him knowing what he needs to do, not only for himself, but then for our football team as well. Certainly when he's here, there's a different level of kind of intensity and maybe focus specifically on offense, maybe when he's not. But I also think it's not a bad thing for letting some of these guys get established with our offense a little bit. Certainly, maybe the foundational principles before he gets here, because it's not easy, and we want to give those guys the best chance they can when he gets here.
So, I mean, I'm as guilty of this as anyone to suggest, hey, you've got all these changes, you probably should come here. That's not necessarily, in your mind, a slam dunk of what would be best for these young guys.
Not necessarily. I will say that we want our players here all the time. I mean, that's the way we would like to have it. It's voluntary for a reason. But, coaches, scouts, this sort of, I mean, we want them here all the time. I do have a little Ted Thompson that I've trained under where, like, when they are here, you don't want them getting hurt either. So, I mean, Ted always used to joke that after the Super Bowl, when we were locked out, that was our best offseason. He always used to joke, you know what I mean? Because nobody could get hurt, you know what I mean? So I got a little bit of that in me, but at the same time, there's a different energy in the building, and obviously having your players working as a group towards a common goal is something that, you can't replicate when they're all over the country.